Hello everyone. Please let me introduce myself. My name is Suzanne Kerr and I'm one of the directors from the Accounting and Business Solutions team at MHA Henderson Loggie, and I'm also your host for today. As a firm of chartered accountants, we've been promoting the month of October, which is Business Startup Month. You may have seen some of our posts on LinkedIn and other media streams. With that in mind, and also the impact of COVID, there's been many individuals considering starting up in business. As accountants, tax and business advisors, we are here to support you during this time to ensure your startup journey and your business growth is an enjoyable experience. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us at our webinar this afternoon. Before I introduce the speakers, we have a short poll, and if you don't mind participating in, this should just pop up on your screen shortly. It's quite a simple poll. There's just 4 bullet points there. I've got an idea, but haven't started up yet. I've started my business, but it's still early days. I've had a startup business for a while, but I'm looking to grow. And I've got some contacts who are thinking about starting up, so I've joined for information. That's your options. Okay, so we have our poll results in, and around half of you have got an idea, but you haven't started up yet. And there's a mix of everybody else between those who are already in business and are looking to grow. So that's a really, really good mix of people. So this should be really interesting for you. Today, we've got a fabulous lineup of speakers, so please let me start the introductions. Firstly, we have Donna Williamson of Business Gateway. Business Gateway provides support and resources during business startups and beyond. We then have Debbie Gallacher, who's a business owner of Love Your Planet. Debbie is a former colleague, as was an employee of MHA Henderson Loggie. Joining us from our Aberdeen office is Mark Hay. Mark is a director within our Accounting and Business Solutions team who will cover startups from an accountant's perspective. Also joining us is Andrew McRae of Museum Context, who's talking us through taking your business local, national and international. We then have Elaine Fleming of Ginger PR, covering how to create a brand and how to stand out. And last but not least is Louise Mackie of MHA Henderson Loggie, who will cover the key tax considerations on startup. We've received some questions in advance, so we'll aim to answer these questions during the Q&A session at the end, but please also make use of the Q&A function throughout today's session, which will appear at the bottom of your screen. We will also have time to ask our speakers some of these at the end as well. There's also a chat function which you can use to chat with other attendees and speakers, but if you do have any questions, please make sure you use the Q&A section, and that would be ideal. I shall now hand over to Donna of Business Gateway.
Hello, thank you, Suzanne. That's the screens up now. Thank you for inviting me along today to give a little chat and we talk about what Business Gateway do. There's just some statistics to start off. There's 57 local Business Gateway offices in Scotland, and there has been for a long time. Business Gateway offer a great range of free services. It's amazing that we're still running a free service, but it is. So we hope you'll take advantage of that. We're accessible to all walks of life of business. So you can be pre-start, you can be early stage growth, you can be existing, and we're happy to speak to you all. Some statistics, 2018 and 19, over 40,000 inquiries were had at the Business Gateway head office. And again, same year, we started 9,083 businesses. Interesting enough, a long time ago, I've been around for a long time, there was a very small amount of women who were setting up in business. So now 50% businesses are led by women, which is a fantastic statistic. So we have advisors, that is you'll be allocated an advisor when you come through Business Gateway who will take you forward with setting up the business. We also run a range of workshops that you can attend, and we have an amazing business information service that I'll talk to you about. Okay, the role of the Startup Business Advisor is to motivate and encourage you. We have all sizes of business that will come to us, the part-time, small, one-man bands, through to larger companies that want to get some more knowledge about it. So we're here as a first point of contact to help you run your business. We offer free and impartial advice, and we will assist with business planning. We won't do the business plan for you, but we will point you in the right directions. And we're here to ask questions. People tend to say to me sometimes, oh, this is a stupid question, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. Why would you know about business if you've never been in it before? So we encourage people to ask as many questions as possible. We'll help identify potential funding opportunities that you might be looking for. Unfortunately, there is not very much out there at the moment, but we can chat about that if you like. And we will signpost you to other organisations. So whether it's Career Scotland, local councils, unemployment bureaus, that sort of thing, we'll take you forward with that as well. Okay, so we run many workshops, but this is the 4 startup workshops that we're currently running. So the awareness session, that is the very first one that people would come along to. So what we discuss here is the structure of your business. Have you thought about, do you want to be a sole trader, self-employed, or do you think you want to be a partnership or a limited company? So maybe people don't know the difference between them all. Excuse me. So we will go through that with the client to discuss what might be the best way for them. We touch on taxes and national insurance as well, because obviously they've got to do that when they're setting up. And we look at insurances. So there's many different types of insurance that a business may need. So we go through the ones that may be relevant for that business. We'll also look at premises. Do you need premises? Are you planning on working from home, and all the different aspects of working from home, what you need to do insurance-wise, and the legalities of working from home as well. So that's just a sort of snapshot of what the awareness session will do. Then we go on to the marketing. That's the second one, although you can take these workshops in any order. So the marketing, it'll look at market research initially. Okay, so how do you know there is a demand for what you're doing? So it's doing research on the type of business that you're setting up. So we would help you decide what kind of market research you need to do to get that information. There is no point in opening a business if there's nobody there that's interested in your product or service. So we'll explore that aspect of it. We'll look at how you're going to promote yourself. So is it going to be social media or business cards, flyers, all the different aspects of promoting yourself. TV and radio as well. Nowadays it's a bit more accessible. It's not quite so expensive. So again, that's something we would look at. And we touch on branding. I know we've got a speaker who's going to talk about branding later. We definitely don't go into depth, but we do mention it in the marketing workshop. The third one we do is the business planning. Now, business planning, it's really important to think about doing a business plan. We've got templates that you can use. Lots of organisations have templates, and it's just to help you decide how you're going to run your business. So it's looking at all the different aspects. So you would take part of the marketing, the finance, who is going to be in the business, the structure, employees. There is no right and wrong way for your business plan. All we do is give hints and tips what needs to go in that plan for you to take to if you're looking for funding or any other type of finance you're looking for. So we run through the structure of that. We won't do the business plan for you, but we can guide you as much as possible. Okay. Finance. Okay, so our workshop for finance looks at doing a cash flow. So that's looking at projecting a year's cash flow, or how many years you want to, but mainly it's 1 year that we look at. So how much money do you think you're going to have coming in? How much is going to be going out? Is it going to be financially viable? So we do look at different things on aspects of that. We look at your working capital. Do you have enough money to keep you going? How do you get paid? So we'll touch on that as well. And the legalities of running the finance side of things, the VAT, these sort of things. So we look at that as well. There is also other workshops that are not down here. Digital Boost workshops they're called, and they look at how to promote yourself on different types of like Facebook, website building, video production, all these. Okay, the Business Gateway website, we have got a startup action plan. It's good to have an idea of what you're doing, so you can write it down. A lot of the time it's all in your head, you know, this is what I'm going to do, but actually having an action plan is a good thing to do. We have got business information fact sheets. We look at the regulations that's on there. The business events, it's not just workshops we do lots of different types of events. The workshop details, there's a couple of case studies that you can look at, and that is the email address, the website address for our website. It's really good if you can manage to have a look at it and see all the different items that are there. Okay. Business information team, great service. You can get a wide range of information, as it says here. They will do market research for the type of industry that you're going into. So depending on what you're doing, we'll make sure that you know, we're giving you as much information and up-to-date information as possible. They will do, as I say, the market research. They will do sourcing suppliers, not just local suppliers. They'll look overseas as well. So if you've got a product that you want to promote and something quite different, then that's where you can get. I think they do about 100 different companies that you could look at. They won't do a credit report now. They used to do, but what they'll do is they'll get all the background about a specific company. So if you're away to start trading with them, then you've got an idea whether you're likely to get paid or not. And they have a sort of premises information, which looks at a company called Nova Loca. They will give you all the different types of commercial buildings that are up for let at the moment. So that's available as well. They do newspaper articles. So if anything's been written about what you're going away to do, or competitors, they'll look at that. It's up to date and relevant, and it's free, which is amazing. That is the contact number, which is also up on the Business Gateway website, and there is the website itself. And that is me. Thank you very much for listening. That is my contact details. I don't know who put my name up specifically, but you're very welcome to contact me, and we can chat about maybe coming in and getting in touch with us. Obviously, if you're out with Tayside, you'll be allocated another business advisor wherever you may be. Okay, that's me for the moment. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to pass you on now to Debbie Gallacher from Love Your Planet, and she's going to talk about things that she's learned when she set up a business. Thank you.
Hi there. Thanks, Donna. So my name's Debbie and I own and manage Love Your Planet, a zero waste shop in Broughty Ferry. Love Your Planet is a zero waste shop where customers can bring their containers or use the paper bags provided and fill up on a large selection of dry goods such as flowers, grains, cereals, pulses, dried fruit and herbs and spices. We also have a selection of household detergents to fill up on, including washing up liquid and laundry detergent. We also have a website which I managed to build myself where customers can shop online for click and collect or delivery. This has been very popular in the current situation. We also have a peanut butter machine where customers can grind their own peanut butter. And for our first birthday, we bought the shop an amazing coffee grinder where we are growing the range of coffee beans we supply for customers to buy as beans or grind in store. I left my job with Henderson Loggie just over a year ago and I opened the shop 2 weeks later. However, the start of the journey was early January 2019 when I had the idea for the shop. So in total, it took me 9 months from the initial idea to the shop opening. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the lessons I've learned on my journey so far. So you have an idea for a new business venture. Great. Now what? I made a step-by-step plan. I needed funding to make the shop as fantastic as it is, so my first step was to prepare a business plan and projections. I then applied for funding using these. Once the funding was approved, I then began to seriously look for premises while sourcing suppliers for goods to sell in the shop and equipment. The thing I learned most about this process is that it takes time and patience. I expected everything to fall into place easily and quickly, but this certainly wasn't the case. There was a lot of hard work and lots of highs and lows. Projections take a lot of time to do, bank funding applications take time, and you're not the only clients for solicitors or surveyors. I think it's important to understand this. Not everyone's going to go at the same pace you want to, so you need to learn to be patient. Although you also need to be persistent to chase what you want. I needed to do this to chase up a funding stream I was waiting for and to secure the premises I wanted. I think I pestered the landlord so much he gave me the property so I'd leave him alone. You also need to find out what help there is available. I got help from lots of different sources, both formal and informal. One of the first people I actually contacted was Kerr at Business Gateway. She was a great help, and the Business Gateway have continued to be a source of help throughout my first year. I also got a lot of help from family, friends, and colleagues. My advice would be to look for and accept all help offered, even if it is to help paint your new premises. Every little helps. You will have a few big decisions to make, so I would advise you take time to make these. I was so desperate to open the shop, I jumped at the first property I came across that I thought was suitable. In the end, that lease fell through, and at the time I was devastated, but it actually meant I am now in Broughty Ferry, which I think is a way better move than being in town where the original premises were. Another important thing is use professionals when it comes to solicitors, surveyors, and accountants. Advice early on from these professionals is definitely money well spent. It seemed like a big expense at the time, but it might save you money in the long term, especially in relation to negotiation of your premises lease, legal structure of your business, property surveys, and accounting software advice. Another thing I wish I'd done was to take time to shop around for the best deals on utilities, insurance, and banking. There are some great deals to be had, so shop around. Be prepared to be bombarded with phone calls as soon as the details of change of ownership for the lease becomes known to the utility providers. Due to the fact that I was so busy working full-time and working hard to get the shop open, I ended up being tied into a 4-year contract for my electricity. Not ideal, and I wished I had shopped around. Also ensure your business insurance covers everything you need for your business. The insurance brokers really know their stuff, so ask them for advice. The provider I use went through everything I had and even streamlined it for me, as I didn't need everything I thought. So that saved me some money. You also need to keep all paperwork from solicitors, banks, surveyors, stock suppliers, utility companies, insurance providers somewhere safe. You're issued with this paperwork for a reason, so keep it somewhere safe. You might not know you need it at the time, but no doubt you will be asked for it at some point, especially from your accountant when it comes to your year end. In the early stages of starting and running your own business, you are dealing with so many different people and companies, it's important to keep track of who everyone is, passwords, email addresses, policy and loan documents. You also need to keep on top of your paperwork. I would advise to file all invoices and bank statements at least monthly in folders on your computer, but remember to take backups. I am VAT registered and I use QuickBooks, a cloud-based accounting software. I am lucky enough to be a chartered accountant, so I am fine with completing my accounting records. However, for my first VAT quarter, I didn't do any preparation in advance, so it took me around 2 weeks to track down all my paperwork and emails with invoices to pull together my VAT return. I quickly learned that I needed to be more organised. I now save invoices as they come through, mainly by email, to a folder, and then I add them to my accounting software while I prepare my monthly bank reconciliation. This is still time consuming, but a lot less than when I left it all to build up. If you're not preparing your own accounts, it's important to keep all the paperwork organised to pass on to your accountant. So again, I would advise to do this at least once a month. Another thing that I learned early on is listen to your customers. I am really lucky to have such nice customers, and they're always coming up with really good ideas for stock, or they tell you something and this grows to be an idea for your business or a post on social media. This happened to me with our very successful baking bags. A customer came in to weigh out all her ingredients for our Christmas cake, and in the end she said how amazing it was that everything was weighed out, there would be no food waste, no plastic packaging, and I had saved her money. We launched the Christmas cake baking bag, which was very successful, and it's now our second year and already they're selling well. We also do a range of other baking bags, with the chocolate brownie being the most popular. Again, ideas for new baking bags will often come from customers. Something else you need to watch is your competition. Keep an eye on what your competitors are doing through social media. However, don't obsess about it. It's important to see what they're doing, but the most important thing you need to be focused on is your business. If you make your business the best you can and run it the way you want to, then it will be successful. You can't change what your competition is doing, but you can look to them for some good stock ideas. Also, enjoy what you do. I think if you enjoy what you do, then this will feed through your business and it'll enhance your customer-client experience. I want every single one of my customers to feel special and enjoy shopping in my shop. We always offer them help and we offer them some chat, which most customers enjoy, and they look forward to coming into the shop to share what they have been up to or what they've been cooking. Finally, don't underestimate how much hard work is involved. I had visions of me opening the shop around 8 AM and leaving just after 5. This doesn't happen. Due to customer feedback, I increased the hours the shop was open, and you're in early filling stock, cleaning, making up orders, answering messages, ordering stock and preparing social media posts. When I do leave the shop in the evening, I generally have things to do for the next day in the shop. We are closed on a Sunday, but most weeks I am in with something needing done for an hour or so. But it's all great fun and I wouldn't change it for anything. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully the things I've learned in business so far will help you on your startup journey. I'll now pass you on to Mark Kay from MHA Henderson Loggie, who is going to cover some questions that you should ask yourself when starting up a new business.
Thanks. As Suzanne and Debbie said earlier, I'm Mark Kay. I'm a director within MHA Henderson Loggie's Accounts and Business Solutions Department. So in my 17 years in general practice within accountancy, I've worked with a lot of businesses at varying stages of their life cycle, from startups and established businesses, businesses winding down with their owners looking to sell up or maybe retire. But by far the most exciting time is the start of a new business venture. Everything's new. Business owners are full of enthusiasm. They just want to get out there and get started. Personally, I'd just like to help them get off to the best start possible. So I thought I'd chat through some of the key things that are often overlooked at the outset. Now, some business owners often rue the decisions they made at the beginning, but that's all part of the learning curve when you start your own business. You know, mistakes will happen. With that in mind, you might as well learn from other people's mistakes. So starting a business can come with numerous challenges. So before you start up and jump right in with all your hard-earned savings and start trading, it's important to get a plan in place. And this starts with asking yourself some essential questions about your proposed business. So first thing to consider, does anyone actually need your product or service offering? Because at the end of the day, if there's no market for what you're looking to sell, then it's really unlikely that your business is going to take off in the way that you hope. The next thing to ask yourself is your business likely to be sustainable? You know, you need to think about what you're selling. Will people keep coming back for more, or do you need a constant stream of new customers making one-off purchases? If it's the latter and it's one-off purchases, then you need to consider, can you sell enough to cover your costs and live off the profits on a long-term basis? Next up, what business structure is best for you? Now, it's quite common to assume that going into business means you're either a sole trader or you're a limited company, but that's not quite the case. In fact, there's actually 5 possible structures for any business. You've got your sole trader, which is your self-employed, partnerships, limited liability partnerships, limited companies, and community interest companies. Those are companies for the social good. They're not-for-profit organizations. Now, your options don't just depend on whether you're working alone or in business with others. There's more to it than that. For example, you need to consider who your customers are. You might need to set up as a limited company just in order to work with certain other companies. Another common mistake in this area happens when new business owners go into business with friends or family. You know, you need to consider what's going to happen if your personal or professional relationship with these people go wrong. So it's risky to assume that things will never change. They can and they often do, so you need to be prepared. To set your business up for success, put clear legal contracts in place and agree on the constitution of your business entity right from the start. Also, when looking at your proposed structure, it's probably good to consider whether or not you need to be registered for VAT or PAYE from the start. This is something your accountant can talk you through, and we've actually got a great article on our website covering what you need to know about VAT when running a small business, so that's definitely worth a look. Next up, you need to consider how you're going to fund your business. One thing most long-standing business owners will tell you is this: cash is key. There are lots of great businesses in the past that have failed purely because they ran out of cash. So before you even start, make a list of all the things you think you're going to need to get the business up and running, and then allocate a cost to each of them. That gives you a rough idea, a budget of what you're going to need to fund before you can even think of making a sale. Now, whether you can self-fund that from your own savings or you need to look at borrowing, again, we've got another great article on the website on possible sources of funding that you can take a look at. It's well worth a look because there's actually more avenues than you think. Next to consider, what's the value of the product or service that you're selling? Now, this is all about how you set your prices, and it's often one of the hardest things to decide upon. For instance, if you sell a physical product, you can work out how much it costs for you to buy it in or manufacture, and then add a profit margin. That's basically a cost plus approach. It's relatively straightforward. But if you're selling a service, effectively your time and expertise, then how much do you charge? You know, how much is your time actually worth? You could work out what you need to make in a month and then set an hourly rate based on that. But at the end of the day, your pricing isn't just down to you, because you also have to consider your competitors and your likely customers. Knowing how much other people charge for a similar service gives you a good starting point. And obviously knowing that gives you an indication of what customers are willing to pay for a certain good or service. Now, we often find that many new startups haven't thought about these first 5 areas in much detail, but the better prepared they are, the more likely they are to develop a sustainable, profitable business. Now, it wouldn't be right for me as an accountant not to mention the one thing that all business owners dread, the actual finances and the paperwork. So once you've considered all the points we've just addressed and you're ready to start looking at the funding and getting the business up and running, you need to think about the numbers and plan ahead. because as the saying goes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that's where our friends at the Business Gateway can be invaluable to you as a new business owner, because their startup advisors are fantastic. They can show you how to construct your own business plan and projections and help you use those to achieve funding. Now, once you have your plan in place, you can also then track your progress and amend it for anything that didn't turn out just quite as expected. But how do you track your progress in the first place? That leads us on to the sixth thing to consider: paying attention to the paperwork. Now, this isn't just about checking there's money in the bank on a daily basis, although you probably still need to do that anyway. As Debbie already said, you need to pay attention to the paperwork and keep on top of it, because the more up-to-date the information, the more accurate and relevant it will be to you. Now, we know that managing records isn't the reason you got into business. That's why there's people like us in the world. You know, we're here to help with the boring task of the bookkeeping while you get on with the interesting stuff. But whether you get accountancy help or not, you still need to keep good records. Reliable records mean you won't have headaches later if your accounts are ever inspected or audited. And if your records are inaccurate, that could lead to bigger problems with HMRC, including the possibility of fines and interest. Now, no business wants those kind of hassles, especially at the outset. So it's important to get your books in order right from the beginning. Good bookkeeping information helps you understand how money is coming into your business and how much money is flowing out of your business. It also helps you identify areas that are making a lot of money for you and some areas that maybe aren't making much money for you or possibly losing money. Once you know where you're at, you can compare your results to your business plan and take any action as required. Now, the world of bookkeeping is not a dark art anymore. You know, it's moved on considerably in the last 10 years or so. Manual books, spreadsheets, they've all been eclipsed by software such as Xero, QuickBooks, many other cloud-based subscription packages that can help automate some of the day-to-day processing work. Picking the right solution for you, whether that's one of these products or outsourcing the bookkeeping completely to an accountant, or even doing it all yourself, requires a bit of consideration. Now, you heard earlier that Debbie chose QuickBooks for her business, but you may find that someone else might find Xero or another program simply easier to understand or use. Being Xero Gold partners and QuickBooks Platinum partners, we can provide you with all the information you need to make an informed decision on what's best for you. We can help you set it up, and then we can also be as hands-on or as hands-off as you require afterwards. Our Startup Business Support webpage has information on these accounting packages, as well as video tutorials for the software, so you can see how it all works before you dive in and make a choice. Finally, point 7, knowing when to ask for help. Now, Debbie's already said that you should accept as much help as you're offered, and that's great. I know as a business owner, it's natural to wear lots of hats when you're getting your business off the ground. No one will work harder for your business than you. But while hard work is essential, you've got to consider how to work smarter as well. Often it's best to hand the tasks that you're not an expert in to someone who could get it done faster, better, or cheaper than you could do it yourself. I've already discussed how you could outsource some of your bookkeeping using or use Xero or QuickBooks to automate a lot of it for you. There's other things you can consider too. You could outsource your payroll, you could outsource your HR, or even your diary management. The key thing to remember here is that if you find yourself spending too much time working in the business, you know, on the admin stuff, compliance, and not on the business, i.e. winning work and delivering to customers, then it's time to seek help. Now, obviously, I've just skimmed the surface of some of the things you need to think about when starting a business, and hopefully it's been of some use to you. And combined with fantastic resources on our small business support page, I hope it does set you off in the right direction. So thanks very much for your time this afternoon, and I'll now pass you over to Andrew McRae from Museum Context, who's going to share some tips on how to expand your business nationally and internationally. Andrew, over to you.
Well, thanks very much. And just to start off by saying, delighted to be here today. Great to hear the speakers so far, and particularly interesting for me was some of the experiences that Debbie's had through her journey since opening the business, and many points you've raised there that I can certainly think back to. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about my business and the journey that I've been on, in the hope that it gives anyone who is joining today and thinking about starting up that motivation and inspiration just to go ahead and go for it. My background is, my retail background is I started at John Lewis when I was 15 and worked there throughout end of school and when I started studying architecture at the College of Art in Edinburgh. So I really loved being in retail and decided early on that one day I would found my own retail empire. So it did take a wee while, but in 2007, I managed to launch my first business. It was a high street shop in Morningside, if you know Edinburgh, and it was all about selling interesting things that were classic design and heritage related. So we did manage, though, we took quite a while it's a family business, myself and my wife. We took a while doing our research, what have you, and by the time we launched, we managed to get going just in time for the credit crunch. So, anyone starting out just now in the depths of COVID, say you've still got to go for it. We did manage to keep the business going. We survived the recession and then the depression and then whatever that turned into. And the determination was there from the feedback of the customers that there was demand for what we did. So the intention was to expand the business across the UK. I managed to open a second store in the old town of Edinburgh and start to see some different customers. And at that point, that was in 2010, and I never thought I was setting out to set up a not-for-profit, but I can assure you for many years that's how it felt. And even as I speak to you today and tell you more about what we've been doing, I do still feel I'm on a startup journey, and it is inspiring listening to others. So I ended up actually expanding the business in Asia. So I could talk a lot today about how that happened, but essentially a stranger called one day and said, have you considered the market in Hong Kong? And I said, well, I haven't. But I was happy to do so. And effectively, from that one chance meeting, I managed to take my brand out there in 2011. And since then, just a few weeks ago, I've opened the 16th store since 2011. So I've actually expanded more in Hong Kong and elsewhere in Asia, including pop-up shops in Macau and Manila, than I have actually back home in the UK. But the UK and Scotland is still our home, and it is where our brand heritage is all about. So quite an unusual story. And really it's all about today is just saying, I think, get going and keep going. So you can always get support for those things. Mark did mention the boring stuff. The boring stuff is important, but you've got to have that determination. So where would you go when you're starting out or looking to grow the business? So we've heard from Business Gateway today. If you're looking to get support within the UK, I'd certainly recommend you consider reaching out to your local Chamber of Commerce. I'm a member of the Federation of Small Business, have been since I first opened in Morningside. So I think that's another organisation that you could consider becoming a member and getting some great support and advice there. If you are thinking about growing the business internationally, then you could also consider Scottish Enterprise and the Global Scot Network. I've recently joined, and it's really interesting to see just the amazing talent that is out there around the world that are all Scottish heritage and roots. So in terms of the journey I've had, I think one of the things I would say about getting advice is don't be deterred. If you don't like what you hear, just keep asking the questions, because it can be a bit disheartening when you are reaching out. And no one's really talked about mentoring today. For many years, I thought my business will be sorted when I find that mythical mentor. And over the years, I think what I've really found is the people who call themselves mentors are unlikely to be the ones that are going to be the person that's going to really help you and give you that advice. It's those people who don't consider themselves to be mentors that really will be the ones that will make that difference. And I think the great thing about having your own business is really those connections. And I think the friendships that come from it, because that's one of the most important things about having your own business, is, as has already been said by Debbie earlier, is you love what you do and you enjoy it, and that will come across in everything you do. In terms of thinking more about the international element, if that were a direction of travel, I would say on a pragmatic level, you need to think about your supply chain. Think about, is that going to be scalable for when you want to take the product overseas? Very practical point is you need to consider how you're going to get your goods out there, especially if you're exporting from Scotland to UK or Europe. So consider getting recommendations on freight forwarding. Think about, well, we don't want to talk about Brexit because we've got enough to worry about just now, but it is looming. So certainly look for what advice is out there and what experts could assist with potential issues that are going to come about through the EU exit. And then also consider something I had to consider with some of the products I sell through museum context is, do you have the regional license or restrictions on those products being sold? I can certainly recommend you avoid any legal battles with Warner Brothers. So in terms of actually going overseas, you also perhaps need to think about, well, how would the business culture differ there? What would it be like when you're actually trying to build a business and make those connections? So that really is going to depend where you go. But for me, being out in Asia, it's been extremely exciting because there's such an entrepreneurial spirit and there's definitely a genuine curiosity. So you're an independent retailer from Edinburgh and you've decided to open in Hong Kong, you know, can you maybe just explain what on earth you're thinking about? But, you know, being serious, it is a different environment out there. And I would say that one of the things that's particularly important is your willingness to get out there, to meet people, to network, and you know, simple things. And you probably hear this from others, things like your business card. Well, in Asia it's called your name card, but it's like your handshake. It is so important that you go out there with that mentality that everyone you meet, you have your details, you're willing to say who you are, and you're willing to connect. It's not been unusual for me to be at an event out in Hong Kong, and within an hour of actually being there, there's a follow-up. You know, there's a willingness to actually take forward the chance to build on that. And I think that's quite different from sometimes how it works in the UK. Certainly over the years, I've tried to do business with so many UK-based companies and I've never heard back from them. You know, in that environment out there, that's just not acceptable. It shouldn't really be acceptable here anyway. So also in terms of your building your brands, the heritage and the connection to Scotland and to Britain is really important, because sometimes you need to step outside where you live to realise just how much warmth there is towards it, and the strong sense of connection there. So in terms of marketing, there's clearly, you know, great opportunities whatever sector you're in. And really, I suppose what I wanted to say today is, you know, in a very short space of time, is I've had a very unusual route to developing the business. And whilst I'm still based primarily in the UK, my intention is to try and conquer China. That was the strapline for this year, was China 2020 for museum context, but that's clearly on hold at the moment. But the market out there is actually booming. It is huge. And I wouldn't want anyone to feel deterred that if they start a business locally here in Scotland, that they shouldn't also think about the fact that that could also potentially have a global reach. So I hope that's been some use today. I'm happy to answer any questions later, and also connect to anyone that would like some other feedback from me. So thanks. I've really raced through that, but I hope it's been semi-coherent. But thanks again. And now I'd like to pass you on to Elaine Fleming from Ginger PR, and she's going to cover how to create a brand and how to make that brand stand out in a very crowded marketplace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I'm sorry, my cat has just come in right now while I'm about to start presenting. That's difficult. Go away. Right. Bear with me. Okay, at least it wasn't a child. So today I'm going to be talking about how to build your brand. I founded Ginger PR just over 11 years ago. So I'm going to talk you through my own startup journey. I'm also going to give you some tips on how to create your own brand. Okay, so let's dive in with a bit of scene setting. What is Ginger PR? Well, we help companies and brands and people, cat, please go away, raise and manage their profile and in turn grow their business. And that comes in various guises. We might help devise a social media strategy or create a content plan for different platforms. We might place stories in newspapers. We might write the copy for our website. we might arrange for an influencer to attend an event and help launch a new product, a virtual event, I might add, at the moment. And let me give you some examples of this in action. So here is a picture where I am supporting a photographer. We use a lot of photography in what we do. It really obviously helps to paint a picture and explain what it is that you're trying to achieve. And a good PR person can always be found helping a photographer, holding a light or a bit of reflective paper. Here I am with the White and McRae team who I worked with across a couple of their brands, and specifically here helping their master blender who was launching his book Goodness Knows. So we commissioned a large nose. Here I am carrying it around the streets of Glasgow, and we also took it around different locations across Scotland with a bit of marketing activation to draw attention to the fact that the book was launched. And my most famous client of all, Susan Boyle. I did work with Susan back in 2008, I think, when she first appeared on everyone's screens at Britain Got Talent. I spent a couple of days working at her house in West Lothian when she had a stream of appearances on the Late Late Show, things like that, live broadcasts, global performances. So that was really a very interesting couple of days, especially trying to keep her cat out of the picture and her neighbours out of the house, who are all very supportive but incredibly nosy. So let me move on. So Ginger PR is also part of Alter Group. So Alter Group is a collective of 4 different agencies that offer an integrated approach. So there's Avian, who do brand and graphic design. There's Ginger PR, we do PR and communications. Blue2, who do web and app development, and Collabo, who are digital ventures and research. So across the 4 different agencies, we work together and individually, and we can do everything from create a logo to your entire suite of marketing materials, as well as design an app or an e-commerce site or newsletters or Facebook ads. That's just a few examples. So I'm going to take you through my startup story. I'll do this really quickly. I worked for some of Scotland's biggest and most creative agencies. And in June 2009, I was made redundant, which came as no shock. It was the credit crunch. And I could see it coming, but actually this was going to play in perfectly because I wanted to set up on my own. I wanted to work for myself. And I thought, well, if anyone's going to be made redundant, I want it to be me, because this is going to give me an opportunity to spend some time getting everything in place and setting up my own agency. So that was when I started Ginger PR as a sole trader. In March 2010, became a limited company. December 2011, moved to Aberdeen. So I was living in Edinburgh, but I had been working across Edinburgh and Glasgow, and moved up to the northeast in December 2011 due to personal circumstances. And then in June 2013, I moved to Angus. So basically, I'm just ticking off all many different locations around the country. But that has played into the business in a way because it's had to make me sort of realign my focus at times. And in November 2017, I rebranded. So the logo that you can see on the screen just now in the bottom left is our logo. This was the logo when I first set up the business. So they're very different. So I'll mention this slightly later on about brands evolve. You're not stuck with the first idea you come up with. And in August 2018, I connected with the Avian Group. So when I say connected, we first met each other and started working together and sharing some ideas. And then in September 2020, so just very recently, Ginger PR was acquired by Alter Group, which is now why we're all part of the same agency, same consultancy. So Alter Group is the parent group, who were called Avian, and they're now called Alter. So I'll just show you very quickly. This was my first office, which was the desk under my stairs in my flat. Very tidy, of course, as you can see. Then this was about just over a year ago, in fact, when we expanded, taking on our first employee. And this is still a home office, the second picture, but it is converted to be specifically an office space, and it happens to be in my house, which has actually worked out wonderfully now, because obviously we're all working from home, and I've got a ready-made office, which has worked out well. And then laterally, this is with the Alter team. So Alter are based in Broughty Ferry in the old church on Brook Street. So we are officially based there when we do work from the office, the rest of the time at home like everybody else. So what is a brand? Let's dive in here. So when you first think of a brand, usually it's an instantly recognizable logo or a company name. Google for Liquid, Heinz, Louis Vuitton, Ferrari, Coca-Cola. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Your brand is more than just the name and the logo that you put into the world. It's your brand story. Your brand and your brand story together are what identify your business, and it's what makes it different from everybody else. What makes you different? So what is a brand? Every business has a brand and a brand story. This is the thread of activity that runs through everything that you do. It gives the business purpose, and it lets the world know who and what you are. It gives life to your visions and your values, and it's what you show through your images. Research shows that messages that are wrapped in a story are 22 times more memorable. So effectively, if you wrap up what you're trying to say, not just in a service that you're selling, but if you're actually telling a story, that's going to go into people's minds, and it's going to do that 20 times more likely. In addition, emotions drive purchases far more than logic. If you want something, you will convince yourself there is a way to get it. You need it. I must have it. I really, really need this new iPhone because I take a lot of pictures for my work. So, I need to have that quality, and I'm going to have to buy that phone. I'm not basing that on any personal experience whatsoever. So what it boils down to, though, is your marketing success depends on your brand connection. It's how your customers feel about you. So how do we do that? Right, let's start with the name and logo. If you're creating a brand, keep it simple. What's in a brand name? Not a lot to start with. The names Apple and McDonald's, they meant nothing on launch day, but now they're world famous. It's what you do with that brand name, the value that you build into that. The same with a logo. You could spend a long, long time trying to get it right, but keep it simple. And remember, things evolve. For example, the Ginger logo has changed dramatically. Google are continually changing their logo, small tweaks. That's not the essence of it all. And keep it consistent. Make sure that your logo and your name are the same across all your platforms and your channels. So if you've got a logo and a name, make sure they look the same font, it's the same color, the same background. It's not 3 different shades of blue, different to the shade of blue that you used elsewhere. And do that across everywhere, all your social channels, your literature, your signage, any platforms online, Google My Business, TripAdvisor, a chamber directory. Make sure everything is the same and consistent. It's not a difficult task. It's just making sure it's done. It's a time-consuming task. It's housekeeping. This is how you begin to build brand awareness. I'll give you some examples. So for Ginger, this is my own personal LinkedIn profile. So the background header is the logo. This is Instagram. So if you look at the very top, there you can see the G in the same color palette beside Ginger PR. And this is Facebook. We've got the same Ginger in the copper gold and the logo is the same in the circle as it is in the circle on Instagram. So it's just creating that consistency across the board. Who cares what other people think? Well, this is a time when you should care what other people think. Think to yourself, what is the first thing people are going to be faced with when they come across your business and your brand? What is their perception of your brand? The online and public perception of your business reflects directly onto your brand. So this also ties into the fact that 87% of buying decisions are made online before purchasing. So people do their homework before they go and buy something. 87% of that decision has already been made based on what they found about you online. So this is a really obvious thing to do. Make sure that you are influencing that as much as possible. Are all your social platforms up to date? Are the images clear? Do you have a website, and are the pages on it, are they working? Are they filled in, or have you still got that Latin placeholder text that isn't really Latin? You know, make sure you've got everything, your shop window, metaphorically and literally, are all in place. Is there also a personal one of mine is there a phone number? That's a really basic one. And so many people don't want to fill in an online form, just put a phone number. And if you have set up something like a Twitter account and you haven't used it for the past 4 months, maybe you should just delete it. Rather than having old, outdated information there, it would be probably better for your brand to just get rid of it. So messaging, this is what you are telling your customers and your potential customers. It's how you help people. It's why what you are offering to the world is relevant. It's what makes you different. Your messaging should reflect the current climate, and it should really sort of reflect what's in people's hearts and their minds and what's going on at the moment. What's the right tone? What are people interested in? What are they talking about? And when you're able to do that effectively, that's really what's going to set you apart from your competitors. There are people out there who are really slow to respond, but if you can tap into what's making your customers tick, then that's when you're really going to bring your brand to life and engage with your target audience. Grow your brand by demonstrating that you're a company that listens and responds to the wants and needs of its customers. Show what you can do. So you can say anyone can say they're good at doing something, but actually that means nothing. Like I could tell you right now, I can juggle with 5 balls and 3 bats. I can't. You know, how you have to evidence what you're saying is true. So use real life examples of work that you've done, the service you provide, the product you make, and why you can do what you can do. Here's a quick example. We worked with a packaging company based in Fife. We did some media relations work for them, getting some press coverage, and we demonstrated the results on Instagram with something really visually led. We put it on Facebook as well with a different version of it, and we also put it on LinkedIn. So we say we can do this, and here it is in action. Customer testimonials. So this is, I find this very interesting. 88% of consumers trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations. So you maybe not met this person, but you trust what they're saying. Harvard Business School says that reviews fill in the gaps by providing a tremendous amount of information on which to base decisions. So essentially, this is people finding out what's the truth. And what is also quite relevant is millennials trust user-generated content 50% more than other media. So that's content created by people rather than brands. So if you can get positive reviews about what you do, then that's really going to take people into that sales funnel and help solidify their decision in whether they want to buy from you or work with you. People buy from people. Posts with images receive 2.3 times more engagement than those without. So that's a really nice statistic. But aside from that, it's about people want to know who they're dealing with, who they're engaging with. So make a connection and establish that relationship and show who your brand is. And it doesn't have to be professional photography. a smartphone can be your best friend. Here, for example, we do some work with Ashbrook Nursery. So Anne is looking at some bulbs in this shot. She's not even looking at camera, she's just going about her day to day, but it really helps to paint a picture. And there's a person in the shot who actually works there, who is the business. And then another example is post here for when Ginger joined Alter. That was a professional shot, which is also telling a story, but you can mix it up. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You know, there are options. So I'll come on quickly to telling your story. So I've talked about how media relations is something that we offer. So telling people about what it is that you do is important. And you might think, well, actually, I think the newspaper or the radio would be interested in my business. So how do you do that? Contacting the media. So first of all, think about who your audience is. Who do you want to buy your services or buy from you? Is it people who live in a certain town? Is it people who work in a particular profession? Is it Scotland wide? Is it business related? Is it lifestyle related? Think about these people and what media they are consuming, and then that's your target. What is your story? What is it you're trying to tell them? What is the thing that makes it interesting? Not salesy, not boring, but what makes it different? That's what's going to interest the media. And when you do get in touch with them, keep it clear, keep it concise, keep it brief. Journalists don't go out, they rarely go out investigating stories. They just don't have the time to do that. They're working with skeleton staff. So if you can go to them with a really lovely, interesting idea, saying, hello, my name is Elaine, I represent Ginger PR. I'd like to tell you about this really interesting, different idea, offering an interview or comment or a photograph, then they may well be interested. For example, this is a story that we placed in the Times about a fisherman from Anstruther who set up his own business during the pandemic. Interesting, different. It's about a person. There's a really nice photograph. This second piece of coverage was at a scout camp, Bleanathel Jamboree. The picture was in fact a selfie taken by the scout leader at the front of the picture, showing all these scouts coming to get firewood on the day of visitors coming to the camp. It's the photograph that makes it, and it's really fun and lively. And it was on a smartphone. So taken quickly with a few sentences about what's happening, sent off to the Dundee Courier, to the Perth edition, and we got some fantastic coverage there. So, sorry, I realised that was quite rushed. That was very touching the surface of a lot of different areas there. But if you have any questions or you would like any more information, I would love to help you, and I wish everybody the best of luck with your journeys, your businesses and your brands, and you can follow Ginger PR on all of these socials. I'll stop sharing. And now I'm going to hand over to Louise Mackie, who's going to tell you all about tax, which as a self-employed person, yeah, get some help. Pay someone to do a good job.
Thanks, Elaine. That was really interesting, and I hope everybody found that quite useful as well. So I'm, as they said, Louise Mackie. I'm one of the tax managers here at MHA Henderson Loggie, and I deal with different businesses across different stages. So hopefully I can highlight some things to be aware of today. So the main section of this webinar is to highlight some key tax points you need to be aware of, and hopefully from that we can help you on your path of understanding all your different tax obligations. So one key thing is all business structures are required to file a tax return with HMRC. However, the type of return, the submission and tax payment deadlines, your tax rates and your tax legislation you have to follow all depends on your business type. The most important thing we would always say though is we would recommend that each business puts funds aside throughout the year to fund all your different tax payments. So I've tried to highlight some of the main points today, and I'm going to compare and contrast them to whether you're a sole trader, partnership and LLP, which all follow the same rules, versus a limited company. The first point I want to bring your attention to is your return requirements and your tax payment dates. So as a sole trader, once you start your business, you need to notify HMRC that you've started to trade. You then receive a notice from them to submit a personal tax return on an annual basis. Now, for you as an individual or in a partnership, you need to follow the tax year, which is the 6th to the 5th of April. So you then file your tax return by the 31st of January following the end of the tax year, and the return has to include all of your personal income, not just that you receive from the business. You then have your tax bill calculated, which you also pay by the 31st of January. And one thing that catches a lot of people out, and is a good thing to be aware of, is if your liability in any tax year is more than £1,000, HMRC will require you to make 2 payments on account in addition to settling your tax bill. So you'll pay 50% of that tax bill in January as well. So you're paying your £1,000 plus potentially at least £500. And then in July, you pay the other 50%. Now, on top of paying your tax, you may also have to pay Class 2 and Class 4 national insurance contributions. And that's based on your taxable profit, but it can hike up your overall tax costs, which is why it's key to make sure you're saving some and keeping it aside. Now, if you were to be trading as a limited company, when you set up the company at Companies House, they notify HMRC that the company's been set up, and that automatically then generates a notice for you to file a company corporation tax return. Now, the company then has the obligation that they need to pay any corporation tax that is due 9 months and 1 day after the accounting year end has been completed. And then you have 12 months following the year end to submit the corporation tax return. So for that one, you're following the accounting year end rather than the UK tax year end. Good to always remember, if you don't settle your tax payments or file your tax returns by the deadline as set out by HMRC, they will impose late payment interest and penalties onto your record. So that's an extra cost that you don't really need. So make sure you know when all your deadlines are. A second thing that's always good to be aware of is cash withdrawals from your business. So as a sole trader, any money that's left in the business after you've paid your expenses and your tax is yours to do what you want with. You can take out tax free. There's no other issues there because you've already paid the tax on the profit. Now, there's quite a stark contrast in this and compared to a company. So in nearly all cases, if you're running as a limited company, any money you withdraw from the company comes with tax implications. So the way we would try to say for you to take out money would be through withdrawal of a salary, getting the company to provide you with some taxable benefits, and they can provide you with a dividend payment if you hold shares in the company as well. One recommendation I would say to you is at startup is get somebody to run through a planning review with you, find out how much money you need and how's the best way for you to extract that from the company. It could save you a lot of money in the long run. Also, if you've got a director's loan account, because you've put money into the company, these funds can be paid back to you tax-free as and when the company funds permit, because it's effectively just a loan repayment of the money that you've put in. So that's a good way to get some money out without incurring a tax charge. As an individual though, being the company director, you may also need to prepare a personal tax return to declare the income that you've been receiving. You would then follow the personal tax rules as I mentioned for a sole trader earlier. So you need to be aware that you might have to deal with the company side of things and your own personal. So watch you don't let one slip. Now, the key thing that everybody's probably looking at is your business expenses. Pre-trading expenses is something you've probably already started incurring if you've not started, or you've got a whole load of receipts waiting something to do with them. So to get to the point of being able to start to trade, you've likely to spend money on things for your business, such as buying equipment, buying stock, paying rent for premises, paying all your insurance costs, and paying for advertising. These expenses are classed as pre-trading. Now, if you're acting as a sole trader, if you've incurred any of these expenses 7 years prior to you actually starting to trade, you can bring them in on the first day that you start trading and you get the tax deduction for those expenses, plus anything that you incur within your accounting year from when you started to trade. So it's always good to make sure you've kept them and keep them in a good organised fashion. If you're running as a limited company, slightly different in that you can incur expenses in 2 ways that will fall into the pre-trading. So you could incorporate the company, but you don't start to trade for a number of months or years. Anything that's incurred in that period can also be claimed. And if you've started to incur expenses personally, and you plan to go down the company route, but you've not yet incorporated, you can bring those costs into the company when it starts trading as well. And what would happen is you would have a director's loan account set up. The costs would go into your director's loan, the business gets the deduction for them, and then the business can repay you when the funds permit, and there's money there to do it. Again, all those expenses within the company situations are claimed in the first set of accounts, and they've got to have been incurred within 7 years prior to starting. Now, allowable business expenses in the main. Each business will have its own quirks as to what money needs to be spent on, and I can't go over all the different types of expenses. However, hopefully I can try and highlight some of the things that you might want to think about so you ensure you get as much tax relief as possible. And because that's always the thing, you don't want to incur something and then you find out you can't get a deduction for tax. So one key thing I would always try to stress to everybody is that you get the bills in the business name, whether you're a sole trader, partnership, company. That's one of the key things to try and do. Now, depending on your business structure, there are different factors to be aware of as to the different types of treatment of the expenses within your tax return. So as a sole trader, you may find that not 100% of your costs relates to business purposes. And some of the costs have actually been incurred for personal reasons. Since effectively you and the business are the same, so there will be a lot of crossover in the expenses that you've probably found that you've been incurring. So the most common example for this would be a mobile phone. So you would use the phone for both personal and business reasons. In these cases, what you would need to do within your tax return is identify how much usage relates to business purposes versus personal. And for that personal cost, you would not get a deduction within your tax return. So the way to judge it would probably be on a reasonable estimate basis to arrive at a percentage that you would want to add back. And the flip side, if you were a company, it's a lot more stringent on what you would be able to do as an individual. Of course, anything that's incurred that's business related is not necessarily an issue. But if you get personal use of a company asset, such as a car, or if you have a personal tax bill paid on your behalf, what that is classed is benefit in kind from the company. Now, there are a number of things you need to do in these cases when you get a benefit, which would be a whole other webinar itself if we were to talk about that in full. However, what you need to be aware of is that the company may be able to claim the deduction for the expense that's paid or provided to you. However, you have to pay income tax on the value of the benefit you've received. So it can end up being quite a costly way to extract money from the company. And there are also additional reporting requirements to deal with on the company side, because that's what comes under as P11D forms, and there's additional tax charges with that as well for the company. One good tax planning point though for a company with expenditure would be get them to take out a phone contract. They can then provide you with the phone and they get the full tax relief for that, and you don't have to pay tax on that. It's one of these ones that fall into a tax-free benefit. So that's always a good way to minimise your costs, especially if you've got high volume on a phone between data and things like that. Some general expenses that apply to all business structures, regardless of how you're trading, would be your car costs. I'd always recommend that you maintain a mileage log. So you would detail the travel, date of travel, where you've travelled to, the number of miles you've travelled, and you'd only have to do this for business purposes. You would then claim a deduction for mileage at 45p for the first 10,000 miles and 25p thereafter. And the business then gets a deduction for that, and you can get that without paying tax on it. If you were trading as a sole trader, what can actually be more beneficial in some cases would be to bring your car into the business as an asset, and then you would claim all of your costs through your accounts and then claim the business percentage, like what I'd mentioned for the mobile phone earlier, within the tax return. Now, a lot of company directors in regards to cars think about getting a company car. If you're wanting to go down that route, I would suggest you get an advisor to actually set out whether it's cost efficient for you or not, because a car benefit can actually be really quite costly for you, given that it gives you a taxable benefit. Clothing is another common thing. You can't get a tax deduction for normal daily clothes. However, anything that you put your business logo onto, or is deemed to be protective in nature, so safety wear, overalls, specialist boots type things, you can get a deduction for those, so make sure you put all those to the business. Common thing that catches a lot of people out is if you incur any client entertaining costs, you get no tax deduction for those at all, so always be aware of that if you're going to pick up a bill. And with the whole current nature of things that are going on, we're all working from home. What you can do is you have, either as an employee of a company or as a sole trader, you can claim £6 per week under the HMRC guidance, and you can get a deduction for that. You don't need to keep any records to prove that you've done that. So it's quite a straight way to do it. If you're a sole trader though, we can do a comparison depending on how much you work from home, maybe not under the current circumstances, but in normal terms, to see whether it's better to actually bring in a percentage of your full home costs, and then see what weighs up to give you the better deduction. Because the key thing is, we would always look to maximise the tax release for you as much as possible. So we would always look at these types of things to compare and contrast for you. Because it's always important to save as much as you can. The final thing I want to kind of bring your attention to would be employees. So if you take on an employee, whether you're a sole trader or you're working in a company, you have to register with HMRC for PAYE purposes. What then happens is a salary payment will go through payroll with tax and NIC being collected from the payments. A key thing to remember though, if you want to take on an employee, is you will also have an obligation to pay employers NIC. So you need to make sure there's enough cash to afford both the salary for that individual and make sure you can cover off the NIC costs for yourself as well. If you're running as a company and you want to pay yourself a director's salary, again, you would need to register to make sure that this salary goes through payroll. I know I've covered off a lot there, I've probably done it quite quickly, but we're always available if you want to drop any messages in by email or any questions in the chat, feel free and we can pick them up. So hopefully you find that useful to give you some pointers in the right direction. And I'm going to hand back over to Suzanne, who I think is going to go through some of the questions that have come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Just before we go into the Q&A session, if anyone would like to get in touch with us to discuss their startup business, we're offering a free initial consultation call to give you some advice to get your business off the ground. You can register interest on our website. There's a link that will be going up in the chat area, and we can get in touch with you as soon as possible to arrange a time for a Teams Zoom meeting and find out a little bit more about yourselves. So we have some questions that have come in. So Mark, I'm going to start off with you, please. The question is, how soon should someone register with Companies House, and if they're exploring the idea of a startup?
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, I think it's an important topic to cover, as there's often a bit of confusion over this. So essentially you need to register with HMRC within 3 months of starting to trade, whether you're self-employed, sole trade, partnership or the company. In terms of Companies House, you can't trade as a limited company until the company actually exists. So if you want to start up on your own and you want to trade through a limited company right off the bat, then you need to set the company up before you start to raise any invoices. You can register a company fairly quickly these days, often in a couple of hours. You don't need to start trading from it straight away either. You could set up your company just to protect the name. You know, you maybe want to name your company a certain thing, don't want anyone else to use that. You could set a company up and then just leave it dormant until you're ready to start trading. You just need to remember to advise HMRC of the date you actually do start to trade.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. Okay, the next question I think is for Louise. Louise, how do directors' loans to a private limited company work? And do they have to get paid in the tax year, or can they be carried forward into future years?
Okay, so when you set up in the company, you'll have your director's loan account. So you can put money that you've paid into the company there so you can get it back. Or if you've taken out money, it can also go in there. So effectively, you've been loaned money from the company rather than being paid a salary or a dividend. If you have an overdrawn loan account, so you've been loaned money by the company, you you don't have to repay it within the accounting year end. However, there are tax implications if you don't. So if you go over £10,000, that's classed as a taxable benefit if you're not paying a commercial rate of interest to the company for that loan. So you would have taxable benefit, the company would need to complete a P11D, and then you pay tax on that value. Also, if you've not repaid the loan in full within 9 months of the company year end, the company will also get a tax charge. So they have to pay 32.5% on that loan balance. However, the one saving grace, I suppose, to that charge is when you do repay your loan, you can, within your corporation tax return, you can confirm that to HMRC, and then they will repay or effectively offset that against your corporation tax liability for the year. So you do kind of get that money back, but it's a big cash flow impact, obviously, when you have to pay over in addition to your corporation tax liability. So hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, that's really helpful. Donna, there's a query here for you. What's the most important aspect of a business plan from the perspective of a potential investor or landlords? Donna, I think you need to unmute.
Sorry. I would make it very clear. Don't have jargonisms all through the business plan. One of the things that we do in Business Gateway, we talk about a SWOT analysis. So for a lot of people, they will have no idea what a SWOT analysis is. It actually stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So if you're doing your plan, make sure that it's as clear and concise as possible. Occasionally, we get one that, lovely plan, really nice, but at the beginning of it, you don't actually know what the business is it's going to do. So always think about the business plan from the perspective of the investor or landlord, whatever it may be, and keep it realistic on the financial side of things. If you're setting up as a burger van, okay, don't expect to get £500,000, and if that goes into a plan, it's not going to be realistic. So I would say these are some of the most important things. I hope that's helped.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you. Elaine, we have a question. Elaine, we have a question for you. I'm looking for some advice on advertising. We are on Google, Instagram, Facebook, and have a website that's been incredibly slow so far. How do we get people and companies to come to us?
Great question. Well, first of all, before launching into any advertising, I would suggest that you have everything in place to convert that customer when they actually reach your website or social channels. So make sure your content is up to date, it's enticing. So when they do reach you, they're going to be impressed by what they see. And as a first port of call, I would definitely recommend having a look into Facebook advertising. It can be really cost effective, and it's also extremely good at drilling down to specific demographics. So everything from age range to location, job title, but you can even get really, really niche to marital status. So if someone's just been engaged, that could be someone that might be of interest depending on your service, whatever it might be. So it's worth having a play around with that and seeing what works, but make sure your, I mentioned this before, your shop window is up and running first, and actually your money's not wasted, because you could direct them to the right place, then they get there and they think, well, actually, why did I bother?
Mm-hmm. So that's quite interesting, because on Facebook you can select who you want to target effectively, but you'll also get feedback back as well as to what demographics they're from and whether you're hitting the right targets then.
Yeah, so your advert, you can pick exactly who it's served up to, so it won't go to anybody that's not within the parameters that you've chosen. So it won't go to the wrong people, and you can target it to be at people who've liked other similar adverts of that type. So you can really sort of be quite particular about it. And as I say, it's very cost effective. So it's worth even just spending 5, 10, 15 pounds on different campaigns to play about with it, see what works, and where you're actually going to get results from it. But of course, that's something that we could help with anybody to do, anybody assistance.
Absolutely, that's super, great. And Debbie, what was the feeling like when you made the jump from being in a secure job and then going to work for yourself?
Well, obviously it was really scary. I was giving up a really good job. It was really secure. I had a good salary. But what you have to do is you have to really believe in what you're going to do. And I really believe that my shop's going to be a success, and it is so far, and I think it will continue to be. Plus, you've got to do your projections and your cash flow. You've got to prove that it will be a success, and that will be endorsed with the bank when they give you their funding. So again, that gives you some confidence. I've also got support from my family and my husband. He supports me all the way. And I also got lots of help from Henderson Loggie and support. And they always said if I ever needed a job to go back to, I could go back. So that helped.
That's very true.
I don't know if they've remembered that.
We're remembering. And Andrew got a question here. I'm interested in exporting, but I wondered how Andrew went about researching his market overseas and deciding whether it was worthwhile financially.
Well, I think that's such an important question when you think about making a leap into the unknown. And for myself, when I went out to the first series of meetings and to try and really understand more about the market, I managed to make some really good contacts quite quickly, and I approached an established retailer there and managed to agree that some of my product could go to them on a consignment basis. So it was a means to actually get the product that I was planning to sell into the local market, but through someone else's infrastructure. So that was a really good way that we were able to kind of take that big plunge. And then after seeing how that well it went, then we're able to progress on to what was initially a pop-up shop and then turning that into a permanent presence. So that's one particular approach that someone could perhaps consider.
That's brilliant, and all sounds really exciting as well. So I'm sure you'll agree we've had some great advice from our speakers today. So what points do you think you'll take away with you? Probably the first thing is not to be afraid to face the fears of startup. And, you know, if you have any thoughts about where you might be needing to improve in certain areas, just address it face on and get the support and help that you need. Make sure you've got the right structure in place that suits your needs the best. You know, Louise went over the tax position of it, but also for you as an individual, what suits you the best too. And ask expert questions about wanting to start out. Reach out to your professionals, your friends, the people who've done it before, because they're the best folk to help you and get you started off on the right foot. Your good starting point is to keep it simple and start small, and making sure that you're monitoring your costs against your budgets. We all know it's easy for costs to hike up and not realising before you know it, you know, you could be living on beans and toast. So you want to be able to live and be able to live well and enjoy what you're doing at the same time. Also, if at all feasible, you know, maybe don't resign from your job if you're able to run your business maybe part-time to begin with. So it gives you a little bit of steady income and a little bit of security first. But that obviously always depends on what kind of business you're looking to go into. And don't be shy. Shout about your business to your friends, your family, your colleagues, and that might take you out of your comfort zone massively. However, word of mouth goes a long way. And as Andrew said, make connections. And Elaine said, you know, make use of PR the best you can, you know, because the more you do that, the more you'll get known. And conduct market research on your industry. You know, what kind of businesses that you're looking to go into. Talk to target customers that might be out there to find out what the potential is for your business. And it's always good to remember that as your business starts to come together, think of it like driving a car. Let your passion hit the accelerator pedal, however, keep your mind controlling the steering wheel. Then you'll be confident about the direction you're headed in. And sustain that momentum to make sure that you get there. Because remember, the sky's the limit. Finally, I'd like to thank all of today's speakers for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us today, along with Elaine's Cat's guest appearances. And also thank you again to all of you for taking the time to listen to ourselves. Feel free to contact any of us. Later this afternoon, there'll be contact details sent to you all or available to you all. So I'd like just to say thank you once again and wish you all the very, very best of luck with your businesses.